World geography, basics of geography, political and cultural. Here are the learning objectives for this video. Number 1. Determine how particular characteristics make each nation unique. Number 2. Compare different political belief systems to one another. Nations of the world. Definitions. There are two terms here that we want to look at closely, and they are state and nation. State refers more to physical geography. Nation refers more to the people that live on that land, on that piece of physical geography. So, state describes an independent unit that occupies a specific territory, and this unit has full control over internal and external affairs. We often use the term country to describe state. A nation is the group of people living on that territory that share a common culture and have a sense of unity. Usually nations and states occupy the same territory, so in that case we can use the term nation-state. If a group does not have its own territory, we refer to that as a stateless nation. One example of that is the Palestinians in the occupied territories. Another example is the Kurds in northern Iraq. Geographic characteristics of nations. Characteristics. 3 geographic characteristics are used to describe a nation. They are size, shape, and relative location. It's the combination of these characteristics that make nations unique. Size. It's interesting that the wealth and the power of a nation are not necessarily connected to its physical size. A small country like England, which was really just a political division of the United Kingdom. The United Kingdom includes Scotland and Wales and Northern Ireland, and England is just the southern part. But this small part of the Great Britain, or the United Kingdom, once controlled a vast empire of colonies all around the world, from India to Australia to, including here in the United States, the 13 colonies. Usually, though, larger nations like Russia, they have the potential to be more powerful because they have more resources and they have a larger population. Here's an example of size. Here's Russia, and you can see how it really spreads across from Europe to Asia and includes a lot of territory. There's a lot of valuable resources there, especially natural gas and oil, that make this country quite powerful. Shape. The shape of a country has an impact on how easily it can be governed. Also, the shape influences how goods are moved across the country or to other places within the country. And shape can also determine how a country relates to its neighbors. Nations can be compact, like Germany, or they can be quite long, like Chile, or they can be fragmented, like Japan, which is an archipelago, a group of many islands. Here you see Germany. It's a very small, compact nation, easy to travel within the country, easy to trade goods from one area to the other, and also, traditionally a very powerful country. And here you have Chile and you have Japan. And Chile is a very long, narrow country, Very difficult to get goods from the north to the south or vice versa. And then you see Japan, and it's, like I said earlier, a group of islands. It can be quite hard to travel from one island to the other. You have to have a lot of boats and ferries, tunnels, bridges, all of those things. Really sophisticated infrastructure. Location. Relative location of a nation is important. Its relationship to the nations around it. A landlocked country refers to a country that's completely surrounded by land and has no direct outlet to the sea. A country like this has to build strong relationships with the surrounding countries in order to ship their goods in and out of the country. You can't bring everything in by air. You have to go through someone else's territory in order to get something manufactured in your country, or a crop that you grow in your country, through the other surrounding country to a port, so that you can put it on a ship and ship it to somewhere else in the world. Examples of landlocked countries: Bolivia and Afghanistan. Another issue when it comes to relative location, another example, is Singapore. It's a tiny city-state, but its location on major shipping lanes and trade routes has brought this country great wealth. It's has one of the highest per capita incomes in the world. Here you see Afghanistan. It's completely surrounded by other countries. It's landlocked. And as I mentioned earlier, they have to have good relationships with neighbors in order to get goods in and out of the country. And some of these relationships actually are not that good at this moment. Here's Singapore. It's a little red circle. You can't even see it. It's so small. But as I mentioned, they have access to major shipping routes and trading routes that go through this area. Question of borders. Sovereign government. A sovereign government controls what happens within its borders. Within its borders, the state can collect taxes, set up a legal code, declare an official language. National boundaries. Two types of national boundaries. A natural boundary, that's based on physical features of the land, like rivers and lakes, mountain chains, like the Himalayas separating India and China. And artificial boundary. This is a fixed line. It usually follows a latitude or a longitude line, and it's usually defined in some treaty between nations. Here you have an example of natural and artificial boundaries. The northern border of North Korea, the Yalujiang River, is a natural boundary. And an artificial boundary is the line between North Korea and South Korea. That was drawn after the Korean War in the 1950s, and it was drawn to separate the two sides. Political belief systems. Government. To survive and prosper, human beings live in communities. In a community, you need a government, which is an organization that protects the community interests and enforces its rules. To exercise this authority, governments are given power, and power is either granted or it is seized by force. Monarchy. This is Queen Elizabeth II, the ruling monarch of Great Britain. In a monarchy, the ruler inherits power. When the ruler dies, power automatically passes to one of the monarch's children or a close relative. Monarchs can be called kings, emperors, sultans. Whatever they're called, they fulfill the role of the supreme ruler. And in this role, they surround themselves with followers and advisors to help them govern, to give them advice. No one knows everything. In the past, hundreds of years ago, kings often claimed to hold power or absolute power by divine right or the will of God. This is less likely nowadays. Today, most monarchies share power with an elected legislature. Republic. A republic is a government without a king or a queen. That's its definition, no king or queen. In a constitutional republic, representatives are elected through a democratic process, through voting. In a constitutional republic, there's a constitution that limits the powers of government and expresses how the government should be structured. The United States is a constitutional republic. Democracy. In a democracy, government authority is based on the will of the people. The people are the government. Citizens either vote on issues directly, direct democracy, this is less common. Usually they elect representatives who make government decisions for them, and this is a representative democracy. This is what we have in the United States. Certain citizens have certain basic rights in a democracy, and they have the freedom to criticize the government without fear. Dictatorship. This is Robert Mugabe in Africa. In a dictatorship, a single person or a small group exercises complete power over others. A dictator usually does not inherit power. He either seizes control by force or he's placed in a position of authority by other people. Any ordinary citizens in a dictatorship, they don't really have much influence over government policies. There are some advantages of a dictatorship. Decisions can be made very quickly in a dictatorship. You don't have to vote on anything. In ancient Rome, they would often appoint a dictator during times of war. Because during a time of war, you really can't put everything up to a vote. You have to have decisions made right away. After the war was over, they would return to a republic form of government. Totalitarian systems. Here is Kim Jong-un of North Korea. A totalitarian system is a lot like a dictatorship. It's like a dictatorship on steroids. And in totalitarian countries, the government controls all aspects of an individual's life. No separate political parties are allowed, no labor unions, no organizations that would challenge the government. The government controls the mass media, that's television, newspapers, radio, because they want to narrow the minds of the public. It's easier to rule ignorant people. That's why education is so important. People are prohibited from expressing opinions, and they can be executed if they oppose the government. Totalitarian leaders have included Adolf Hitler in Germany, Joseph Stalin in the Soviet Union, and today's Kim Jong-un in North Korea. Theocracy. Here's a picture of Pope Francis healing the sick. A theocracy is a government run by religious leaders. In a theocracy, the government claims to be directed by God or at least divinely blessed. There's no separation between church and state, and citizens of other faiths are often excluded from participating in civil activities. Usually, pretty much the only two theocracies nowadays are Vatican City, which is the place which is the headquarters or the foundation of the Roman Catholic Church. It's its own separate country within the city of Rome in Italy. and Iran is something of a theocracy in the Middle East. The end. Thank you for your time.